Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Okay, my friends, once again, it is time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley. And we've got this morning a champion of talk, none other than the one and only Dr. Maya Bowen. Good morning, Dr. Bowen. How are you doing today? Unmute you.
Yes.
There we go.
There we go. Good morning, Jason. I'm doing awesome. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, as is said by what's his name? The guy that's on PBS.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, yes. Mr. Sweater and Mr. Positivity. It is awesome. I find myself a little bit jovial this morning, and I'm ready to do some talking related to some solutions in regards to education. So I'm glad to be here.
All right. Yeah. Nothing like solutions. I love that word. Solutions. What can we do in terms of solutions?
Absolutely.
Gotta mix it up and find a way to fix what we got going on here.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I heard it once put that we should be turning our obstacles into opportunities to thrive. So let's see what we can do with this current status quo that we find ourselves in order to make our circumstances come out in a better way for all parties involved. The stakeholders.
Absolutely. So, we here in the greatest city on earth, Hartford, Connecticut, New England's rising star, always have challenges ahead of us. Some say that we have huge problems in the city, and to me, that's great. Only because huge problems mean opportunities for huge solutions, and huge solutions make changes. So you've got airplanes, cars, submarines, spaceships. We got ships. We have vehicles roaming the surface of Mars and flying in the Martian atmosphere because someone had a problem or a vision. So because a problem is enormous or seemingly overwhelming, doesn't mean that we can't find a solution. It just means that the solution's going to be a pretty good one. So that's where we're working towards. So
absolutely.
Let's
Absolutely.
We'll move forward on that. So, what is one problem you see facing Hartford as it relates to things education?
Interestingly enough, I'm on this new wave of looking at parent engagement. I think that we really have to verbalize and put into action the value that we place on our parents, as well as stakeholders, in terms of how it is that we work together through collaboration, partnership, and building of relationships that will be sustainable so that our students, our children, ultimately get the best from us. And so in terms of parent engagement, there's a few things that have been pointed out in different research venues. One in particular that I'm using indicates that typically we see involvement as being the doing to in regards to schools, which really only means that schools typically will have a certain type of communication whereby they want the parents to contribute in a certain way. However, in terms of engagement, so the use of involvement and engagement tends to merge sometimes, but in terms of engagement, it's more so looked upon as doing with through collaboration and partnerships and relationship building. And so where we see ourselves at this point is really and truly having an understanding of how to best build these relationships. Identifying what it is that the goals are for Hartford in terms of educating their students, in terms of what the role of parents can be in terms of the participation and decisions that are being made so that they can lend voice, a very valuable voice to this process. Because as parents have the first interactions with their own child, what we know is that from birth, the parents impact and develop and pour into the child in terms of getting them ready to transition into different environments. So it's a socio-psychological dynamic that goes on from the home, and then you transfer the child into a school system. And so then the question becomes, what is the socio-psychological dynamic in the school system? Is it likened to how it is? It's the shared belief system from home to school, or is there a different dynamic going on there? So, for example, if it is that in the school system there is a lot of weighty issues going on in terms of negative types of attitudes. The communication is poor or negative, and or there's circumstances where there's a lot of chaos, violence, a lot of security. That typically in a household there's not that, but however, every household is different. Every household is unique as we are as individuals. And so ultimately, in terms of us being a Hartford community, we have to get an understanding of all of these dynamics that are at play and what the children are seeing from us as adults and what we are modeling. And so if it is that we are not great models, then it is ultimately internalized because the children are watching us, that this is the way that we're supposed to speak and behave. And so we're setting the model, the standards, so to speak, right?
Setting bad examples. So
we're setting bad examples. What do we expect the children to actually do with what they see? They're going to emulate us.
Well, let me push. Well, not necessarily push back, but let me bring this into consideration. So, there is no doubt some bad actors, whether they be at home, on the street, to and fro school, or at school, but certainly not everyone is bad actors. So, how do we resolve some of the issues that we have relative to the negative without bringing harm to those issues or those portions of the system that are not damaged? Because
right,
now in Hartford we got a lot of the system that's damaged, but the whole system isn't damaged.
Right.
So how do we get parents involved, if you will, in just being involved? Because I don't think that involvement means we're trying to come in and take over your system and tell you what to do or micromanage. But how can how can I help, or what in what way can I be involved without necessarily. I'm not here to take over. I'm not trying to
Right.
come to class and teach.
Right. So it goes back to what I was stating about, the negative attitude in terms of, whether or not a school would actually embrace the parents, right? So here's the thing: if it is that you are a little bit leery about having parents come in because you fear the micromanagement, that's kind of nonsensical when you start to think about it, because the school in and of itself is running based on the goals and objectives that have been set forth. So a parent visiting a school, or parents visiting a school, should be an added value, or seen as an added value.
Mm.
And so where it is that the communication of an environment that invites parents, and it has to be constant. And so we have to look at how the greater society is actually engaged in whatever they do. So we know about commercials be prompting us with images and words and music to get us to consider the product or service that they are marketing. And so in terms of the educational system embracing the value that parents add, it comes down to what are we communicating using specific types of words as well as images to let them know that they are invited into the process. Contrary to what we may think, sometimes you see some schools doing this better than other schools, but holistically, you would think that all schools would want parents to be involved and have some sort of input in regards to what their goals are for and expectations are of their child's academic success.
Okay, so I think I mentioned the story once before. I know I've mentioned it before, but I don't know if I've mentioned it and you've or that you heard me say this. In the story about Eddie Perez and how we were out on the campaign trail, and he said, if we could just get parents to just stop by a school and say, hey, what can I do? How can I help? Give me a kid I can mentor, or somebody whose hand I could shake, whatever the case is. Just come to school and do something. Is that an oversimplification, or what can like community groups, like churches, synagogues, mosques, community-based organizations. Let's pick one out of thin air, like Blue Hill Civic Association, whatever. How can they help in motivating parents, perhaps, to be involved? They could say to their membership, look, we need some of you in here, just 10%, to make a commitment to do something with your kid's school this month. I mean, would that be helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, let's go back to the very beginning of your question. It is not oversimplification. As a matter of fact, when it is that you start to look at the types of things that can be done, a lot of the pushback is that we've come through certain types of processes whereby sometimes we turn it into rocket science, whereby ultimately we never act on what it is that we sit down and plan to actually do. So if you put together a plan and you never implement it, what was the point? You know what I'm saying? A lot of hours wasted, a lot of money wasted in terms of, just coming together to have a chat session. The whole goal of putting together solutions is to actually make sure that we implement them, even at a small scale. So, for example, if it is that you invited Blue Hills Civic Association to the table in terms of assisting with whatever it is that you wanted them to assist with, the invitation, at least the invitation has been extended. The question is, has the invitation actually been extended, and the process for which them to become involved made simplistic in a way where, okay, if we have to follow these protocols, okay, provide us with the paperwork for us to actually go through that process, and then let us get engaged. But it then goes back to whether or not there is actually a plan in place to disseminate this information, where we want community involvement. We want parent involvement. It has to be consistent, and it has to be sustainable, and it has to be with the willingness and care of making sure that the students, the school, the community understands that they are a value-added member to the process. If that message is not communicated, where do you even begin? Well, ultimately, I see that it actually begins at the school, right? So if you have a school that is in need of volunteers, there should be a policy process involved related to communicating that to the local organizations as well as the parents on a consistent basis. Because in order for individuals to actually know that they are welcome with open arms to participate in the process, they have to have that message conveyed to them. No message, no buy-in.
Well, let me throw this out there. Sort of like so what we're ultimately talking about is a relationship. So a husband's married to the wife because, of course, it always starts out as a good relationship because they got married.
Right.
Somewhere along the way. So what do you want to do this weekend? I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, it's up to you. Why it's always got to be on me? Well, you're the one that always. I mean, look, the thing is, where we gonna go this weekend, or is the couple going to go out?
Right.
And so, the argument could be made by one of the two. Well, you never initiate anything like we should go anywhere, so that's why we don't go anywhere. Well, you should reach out to me to let me know that you want to go somewhere. So same kind of thing here. Why is it incumbent upon the school to have to reach out to the parent to say, we want to invite you to the school so that you can show your kids you care? Shouldn't there be some side on the parent that says, look, you guys haven't reached out to us. We would like to be involved in the school. I think that some of these nonprofits, churches, mosques, synagogues, some of the entities that I mentioned, could be maybe some of the work they could do could just be to inspire parents to get involved. I mean, that kind of partnership. They don't necessarily have to be in the school. They could be working with their constituencies, whether they're parents, whether they're their parents, uncles, aunties, whatever the case is, to reach out to the school. I mean, that's another way of getting parents involved in helping give the parents the tools they need to feel comfortable reaching out to the school. And then, maybe we push that way as well. I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Right. So it's all hands on deck. Right. So the captain of the ship cannot do every single thing on the ship without the helping mates, right? So interestingly enough, we know that common sense is not common. And so
say that one more time. Say that.
Common sense is not common. And so with that being said, we have to look at how it is that individuals have an understanding of the process, right? We also have to have an understanding of whether or not, let's say, Dr. Bowen goes to a school and asks how she can help out and is met with resistance, and whether or not that becomes a turnoff for Dr. Bowen to actually return, right? So, and this is coming from a person that is not a parent. So from a parent's perspective, if a parent goes in and is met by a gatekeeper that has a very bad attitude and is very hostile, guess what? At the point where that parent may be turned off by that engagement, that could be a deterrent from wanting to actually even go to the school, knowing that, certain types of attitudes are there just at the gatekeeper level. Okay, you don't even get to talk to the teacher or the principal before you're met with early morning hostility, right? So that's the worst case scenario. Now, where it is that there's a more inviting environment with individuals, welcoming and greeting individuals, parents, guardians coming into the school, then that strikes for a positive case of, okay, we want you to be involved. We welcome you here, and here's what you can do. So here's another thing. Has it been decided on how it is that parents can be more involved? Case in point, let's do something as simple as the Harvard Board of Education meetings, right? So here we find that it's an open forum for the community to get involved. In regards to the community at large, how many individuals can actually attend just based on the day and time that these meetings are actually being held? Another thing is, are individuals such as parents and guardians a little leery when it comes to public speaking? The alternative to actually publicly speaking would be to have someone represent you to read off what it is that you would like to bring to the forefront to the board. So there's a lot of different things that can be taken into consideration in terms of going about solutions if you are solution focused. So the question becomes, are we solution focused in terms of moving around the types of obstacles or challenges that are present in order to get to the solution that produces positive and productive results?
Now, when you say we, the we you're talking about is the parent or the school?
So it's both. It's both, actually. So in terms of the school, looking for more parents to actually become engaged with, indicating their expectations, providing for input per whatever surveys are issued. How do you go about managing that? What type of solution can be derived from, okay, so we had X number of parents respond to this survey. How can we increase the number of parents submitting surveys or paperwork of some sort, right? And then from the parent perspective, in terms of solutions, how does the presentation of their expectations to the school officials become something that they can actually do on a more consistent basis without feeling as though it's not warranted, or their voice in terms of voicing expectations of academic success is not being welcomed or taken into consideration.
Now,
so it's both ends.
Okay, now, so if we're in a city like Hartford, where as quietly as it is kept, 50% of the adults are functionally illiterate. It's a poor city. We still need parent involvement. I don't think there are very many parents who don't want their kids to do better. But there are plenty of parents who demonstrate a desire for their children to get a better education. They know something's wrong with their kids' education, so they do what they have to do to press the issue. And so I'm gonna assume that what you're talking about in terms of those parents that want to be involved, they're gonna push through whatever the impediments are, because that's just in them wanting better for their kids. And so so to me that's group A. There's the parents that, despite all of the hurdles that are in the way, want better for their kids. They're pushing to get better for their kids, but they're being met by gatekeepers and stiff opposition. Then there's the other group who they just don't know how. I mean, wanting better, going to the school. They don't even know how. They can't fill out the survey because they can read the survey.
Right.
All right, and they're embarrassed to go to the school and say I can't read the survey, so they're going to avoid the school altogether.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's these two groups, and
Right.
so I'm trying to find a way to get all of these folks just interested in going to the school, irrespective of whatever impediments may be in the way. If we put something in front of these folks that they want, they're not going to let anything stop them.
Right.
They're not going to let we're sold out stop them. We're not going to let you get in stop them. If they're going to go through the roof, break in the back to get in,
Right.
when people want something,
Right.
you can't stand in their way. You better go get what we
Exactly.
want, or we'll tear this place apart. That to me should be what we can engage into parents, so that they're the driving force, so that the school is responsive to them versus the school trying to do all kinds of outreach. Because to me, it's a given that they should be doing that. If they're not, then someone's just not doing their job. But the parents, how do we motivate these parents to be engaged and involved?
Right. So we need to pour into our parents. So I'm very excited about, just how it is that the parents, have, they face their own types of challenges and obstacles. And now at the point that they are looking over the youth, uh, we have to pour into them, and we have to provide them with encouragement in terms of how to go about engaging, right? So in terms of group B, identifying what it is that group B needs to know, in terms of knowing how to communicate, who to get in contact with. Those types of things have to be developed through workshops and training, so that they can at the end get like some type of certificate or some type of voucher. We have to give them an incentive to understand the value that their voice provides with the process of educating not only their kids, but also uh, diving into embracing that we are all lifelong learners, no matter what age we are. And so, at the point where um, we see the need for a paradigm shift, we have to have a shift where we are encouraging our adults, who are parents and or guardians, that allows for them to see their strengths and value within this society, to lend voice that will provide for some more positive and productive results beyond what the status quo may be presenting. So, for example, in Group B, there are limitations. There's some obstacles, there's some challenges. But identifying Group B and then addressing Group B's needs in order to equip them with the types of tools that they need to move into uh, communicating or engaging with the educational system and officials within the educational system, with the perspective that they too have voice and value. And this whole process is important because self-perception is going to impact how it is that we engage with others, self-confidence. And so in Group B, do we have individuals that are confident in their ability to communicate with school officials in regards to matters concerning their child's education? That's the question mark. And if the answer is yes, then how do um, civic associations, nonprofits, religious organizations build them up in order to get them to the point where they're saying, you know what, I'm good. Let's go have a conversation on and how we can best produce good results academically for my child.
Mm. All right. I'm thinking of Emily Arsenagas, Harvard Parent University, and some of the things that they do in order to help build that kind of intestinal fortitude and strength. And they have created a little force, but when you compare the force that they've unleashed, it's very small compared to the total number of parents within the system. And obviously, as many we need as many parents to feel that way as possible.
Right.
What about those? What about those who feel totally intimidated?
So there's got to be an openness to moving beyond feeling intimidated, right? So at the point where I'm a parent that I want to grow beyond my current circumstances. I want to, versus I'm a parent that is content with my current circumstances. So those are two dynamics to actually have to consider. And so with that being said, it's the openness and willingness of the individual to make that decision, because we can't make anybody do anything that they don't want to do, obviously. And so with that being said, where it is that the messaging is out there, it's got to be consistent, it's got to be positive. I remember back in the day, we used to always have public service announcements that would promote all kinds of positive things, from education and beyond, just to get people to start thinking. It always has some type of little music to it as well, because here's the thing, across the board, music is the bridge between individuals across the board. And so with the public service announcements not being as present in our current cultural climate, that's a gap that's missing, in my opinion, that could provide for getting individuals into the mindset of thinking about, okay, this is how I can go about doing X, this is how I can do Y, and because it is that I know it is possible. Now, when I start talking about possibilities, the question becomes, what are the limiting factors on that influence an individual of thinking that certain things are not possible, right? So in terms of us looking at solutions from the perspective of parenting, communication, volunteering, learning at home, decision making, and collaborating with the community, what are we looking at in terms of the challenges, and what are the expectations that we should be seeking per these types of involvement? And so we've got to start somewhere, and we just need to identify individuals that would like to be engaged in I like to call it level up season, right? So Sierra has this song called Level Up. And so from one position to the next, leveling up is about promotion to the next level beyond where you currently are. And so where it is that workshops are facilitated, and in this pandemic, we can do them via Zoom, where it is that workshops, specifically in terms of how individuals engage in coming up with solutions, how it is that individuals can, let's say, increase whatever deficit that they may have. These should be available and these should be communicated. So here's the thing. There's a lot of things currently available. And so I do remember you saying that, Eddie, Perez said we don't need any more programs.
Right.
We don't, right? So with the existing programs, the question becomes, how can we adequately communicate this abroad to the community so that they know that they are available? And we've got many venues to do that. However, it's got to be consistent.
Yeah. So I mean, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking that you took the words right out of my mouth, because there are a lot of these things already in place. People may not be aware of them, or they may have kind of fallen out of. I won't say out of favor. Maybe people just are not availing themselves of the opportunities to participate in particular arenas, if you will, because you've got the PTOs, you've got it escapes me now, school governance team. So you could actively be engaged in trying to build a school governance team in particular schools. So let's say if a community group adopted a school, how many schools are in Harvard? I think there's like maybe what?
36.
Okay, so
per what was quoted. Mm-hmm.
But so we got 36. We have 36 schools. Mm-hmm. There should be 36 organizations in Harvard. I mean, we can find 36 organizations, 36 companies, organizations, individuals that could embrace a school or adopt a school, and not so much in the formal way where you have this. I'm not opposed to or anything like that, but I'm saying it doesn't have to be some sort of formal engagement. And so we're going to try to make sure that we can find enough parents that attend that school that you're going to join the school governance or be involved in the PTO, and equip and empower them to be engaged so that they know what the PTO is all about or the school governance team is all about, and then help that school go from there. I mean, there are a lot of different things that could be done, but most certainly your PTO, school governance councils. What does the PTO traditionally do?
So basically the PTO is going to be an assembly of parents that are going to try to decide on certain types of things. Mostly what I've seen is fundraising events for specific types of activities for the children that attend that particular school. And I know it goes beyond that. So I would say that the PTO, parent teacher organization, would allow for individuals to come together to share what types of activities as well as academic goals need to be addressed to make the academic process better for the students, right? So, I mean, from the perspective that you have parents and teachers working together, that's relationship building, right? And in light of all that, it strikes me as an interesting dynamic because there's no better way for the child to embrace the process of being educated than to see their parent and teacher working together, building a relationship whereby if the teacher has to contact a parent for any number of reasons, there's a communication dynamic and respect dynamic that is exchanged between parent and teacher to come up with solutions regarding how to best address whatever the circumstances are regarding the child academically and beyond.
Okay, so relationship building is key. So school, the parent teacher organization, they seem to have a little less teeth than school governance council. Um, I think sometimes I think people think of them as being one and the same, but to me they're a little bit different. So the school governance council really is more involved in the actual governance of the school.
Yeah,
Um,
it's policies and procedures, right? So when
mm,
you start thinking policies and procedures, school governance is going to involve officials that know policies and procedures, and then with the involvement of parents, they should be educating the parents on what these policies and procedures are, and how they impact um, the children that are in respective school buildings and within the system entirely. And so ultimately, school governance is an opportunity for parents to learn how policies are developed, and then ultimately utilized within in the system. And so where we have parents at the table for school governance, then when a policy has is being decided upon, the parent can lend a voice to that. So is this policy fair or is it unfair? Is it too harsh or is it too simplistic? That type of voice from a parent is needed, because ultimately, if it is that it's too harsh, uh, a penalty to be doled out on a student, then you should have a parent or multiple parents at the table saying, "No, this is not going to work. This is contrary to the success of the child, or it does not benefit the child to penalize them so harshly in regards to how this has been constructed." And so let's go back to the drawing board and rewrite this, revamp this. Let's think of some other ways in order to address certain types of things, so that it does not damage the child's future, in terms of leaving a stain on their record based on the violation of a policy that was created and violated.
all right, we can take a short break, my friends. Our top of the hour break here, and we will be right back. Continuing, it's Wednesday, Education Wednesday. We talk about all things education. So stick and stay. We will be right back. thinkers are Puerto Rican, Mexican, Peruvian, Indian, Bosnian, Italian, Irish, Jamaican, African American, European, straight, gay, Nigerian, transgender, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, short, tall, skinny, rich, poor, happy, sad. Some of us hold a PhD and others a GED. And though we may be Democrats, Republicans, or members of the Working Families Party, we all have escaped the plantation of party politics and become independent thinkers because we as individuals are more than a party. You see, independent thinkers come from all walks of life. And the one thing we all have in common is that we love, live, laugh, and learn in the city of Hartford. We are the constituents, and the government of Hartford belongs to us. My name is J. Stan McCauley. I'm an independent thinker, and I approve this message because it's time to stop towing the party line and vote for a candidate you can trust. You too can escape the plantation of party politics if you have the courage to free your political mind. Welcome back. It's Morning Talk with J. Stan McCauley. And it's Education Wednesday. We set aside Wednesdays to talk about all things education. And we're joined every Wednesday by our very own Dr. Maya Bowen. And she brings us her perspective on things of education nature. So we'll continue our conversation and change direction just a little bit here. Welcome back, Dr. Bowen.
Thank you. Glad to be back. It's much worthy break needed. The transition. Yes, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say I always forget about the breaks, and the poor team. I feel bad sometimes because Dr. Bowen joins us via Zoom, and we were talking off camera during the break about if you can Zoom to work, that means you can live anywhere, and so it doesn't matter where you are. Your competition that you might be working, that might take your job, doesn't have to necessarily live in town. If you Zoom in to work, they could be in Singapore, and so who knows where they are. She's the only host that really zooms in. Most of our guests zoom in, but all of the other hosts are here in studio. And we're talking, 2 hours is a long time, especially when you're drinking water in between shots. Folk are like, well, you get a break, And so they get up and leave right in the middle of the conversation because, we should have took a break at like 8:30. We didn't. It's 9 o'clock, no break. It's time to take a break. Right. So, the breaks are actually little circuit breakers, but I get in a conversation in listening mode, and I could sit here for 3 hours and not move. But no, breaks are good. So gotta have a break. So want to welcome everybody back, and Dr. Bowen is here every Wednesday, and we have guests many times, but sometimes it's good to just hear from Dr. Bowen and just have general conversation. So, we don't want to have guests all the time, but, we do have guests lots of times. So don't worry. We'll have some more guests coming up here in the future weeks as we drill down into some critical issues. And, and we'll go beyond Hartford. There's a whole lot of area around here as it relates to education. So join us every Wednesday for Education Wednesday with Dr. Maya Bowen. So, Dr. Bowen, what's next?
So, as I usually do, I started digging through some research, and so I came up with something that I found to be interesting in terms of a dynamic to possibly start thinking about. There's so much research out there, so much research, but I started to look at the research from the perspective that what, these are some really good ideas, and then I asked myself, well, why is it not actually being implemented or applied in certain situations so that we can see what type of results that we can get through application. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things where you sit down at a meeting and y'all talk about some really great things, and then nobody does anything. And then when you go to the next meeting, we still talking about the same thing. And then it becomes 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and I could go on. And nothing's been done. Do you know how much transition actually has occurred in leadership, as well as other positions over the course of that amount of time? A lot. And so whatever it is that one group of individuals does not get done within a certain term, it's left for the next administration to have to do. And that's one of the things that I've seen to be really questionable, because growing up in Hartford, I saw a lot of areas that could have been worked on, specifically because when you're a kid, you want things to do during the summer, and there was not that much to do in the summer. Okay, and so I was always questioning and wondering, where are the things for us to do? Hartford was not communicating messages that there were like multiple opportunities to do X, Y, and Z during the summer. So around the neighborhood is where we stayed. And so, as we head towards the summer, I'm starting to think about, all the things that are possible. I know that individuals have some really great ideas. Some funding has come through for certain types of activities to get our youth involved. And so I'm hoping for the best during the summer, because where it is that idle minds or idle hands get into things that can be considered mischievous, dangerous. The worst thing that can happen is for us to not have activities for our youth to get into where it's positive and productive. Because if it is that there's nothing to do, then mischievous types of activities are actually going to occur. And so I'm on the worst case scenario perspective, looking at it, there could be some turbulence over the summer if it is that we cannot provide for positive and productive outlets for our youth. I think that goes in line with even adults needing some positive and productive outlets as well, so that they can get engaged with their children, as well as other types of activities, because you need something to do. We've been in this pandemic for quite a while, and people are restless. And so with that all being said, we need to have the messaging out there. This is available. This is available. This is available. And so, it's got to be something that's constantly broadcast. People are glued to their televisions. They're glued to their phones in terms of finding out information. But, are these particular media venues communicating that? It needs to be a constant message. This is available. This is available. This is available. And it's like this list of activities being held during these specific times and dates needs to be broadcast so that individuals know, oh, I got this as an option, or I got this as an option, or I got this as an option. And where it is that that's not a constant part of the messaging through media, then people are like left wondering what is there to do, and sometimes they'll be like, well, there is nothing to do. However, there are things to do. There's things placed into newsprint as well as broadcast on TV, as well as broadcast on radio. It's just in terms of the audience, it could be hit or miss depending on when it is that they come in contact with this type of messaging.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the other things, like any nuggets that you have for us,
Yeah,
that we
absolutely.
can share.
Absolutely. So in terms of involvement in schools,
Mm-hmm.
family, and community partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
there are six types of involvement that have been identified. So one type is referred to as parenting. Another type
Mm-hmm.
number two, is
Mm-hmm.
communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Type three is volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Type four is learning at home. Type five is decision making. And type six is collaborating with the community. Now,
Okay. Now, so say the six again.
okay, number one, parenting.
Okay.
Number two, communicating. Number three, volunteering. Number four, learning at home. Number five, decision making. And number six, collaborating with the community.
Okay. I think I'm my stuckness. My stuckness is the collaborating with the community. So are these six from the school looking out, or from the community, or parents looking in, or is it kind of like a two-way street?
It's a merger between schools, family, and community.
Okay, okay.
hmm
All right, so then number one.
Number one is parenting. And so, under the guise of parenting, what comes to mind in terms of consideration are examples of related practices,
Mm-hmm.
expected challenges, expected results for students, expected results for parents, and expected results for teachers.
Okay, and
So,
and those things are from the parent perspective.
from the parent perspective of involvement. And so, under the first umbrella, in terms of examples of related practices,
Mm-hmm.
it consists of helping families
Mm-hmm.
establish home environments which support children's academic success.
Mm.
Helping families establish home environments which support children's academic achievement and success.
Okay.
That's the one thing in terms of examples of related practices.
Mm.
So
Mm.
so then the question becomes, how do we do that? Now, we've got a lot of dynamics going on in terms of the number of families and what is considered to be the home environments that are under consideration. So with every family, there's a different home environment.
Mm.
So how does that get established? Parents set the tone for home environments, and so respectfully, so they will set the course of actions, behaviors, communication. They set all that up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in their realm. Now, in terms of expected challenges, there could be challenges in providing information to all families from the perspective that is coming in from the school,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it coming in from the community. So providing information to all families beyond those actively participating in specific types of programs could become a challenge, as well as enabling families to share more information to schools on their children can become a challenge or could be a challenge. And then lastly, making sure that all information for and from families is clear, usable, and linked to children's success in school could be a challenge.
Okay. All right. Number
Number two.
two.
So, in regards to communicating, examples of related practice, or one example would be designing effective forms of school to home and home to school communication.
School to home and home to school communication. All right. I'm applying these things to myself as you say them. Cuz I get those emails from my kid's teacher and I don't even read them. So I mean, so this is therapeutic. So go on.
And keep it, but see, here's the thing: you're not the only one.
Right.
So,
That's why I mentioned it so people will realize that, you may not be you're not the. So this is not these are critical issues. How do you engage parents? Because in my thinking, well, my wife will take care of that. But she's not the only parent that the kids have. So why aren't you involved? I'm sure everyone that's not involved has an excuse. So, but go on. I digress.
No problem, no problem. So you mentioned the dynamic of the two parent household
Mm-hmm.
versus the single parent household, where all the weight primarily
It's on that one
single
parent.
parent.
It must be extremely tough because you got work, you got other things to do, and then you want me to come to I hear you talking about the Board of Ed meeting and the meeting at that school, but I don't get out of work till 6. Meeting start at 5:30. By the time I get home, it's 7 o'clock.
Absolutely. So these are considerable variables that have to come into play and be weighed as how it is that parents um, can contribute when it is that they themselves is taking on the lion's share of the parenting responsibility. So how did I call them super parents? I mean, I think all parents are super parents, but specifically when it is that all of the lion's share falls on the weight on the shoulders of one parent, it's like, how do they do it? I question it because I grew up in a single family parent household, and I wondered how my mom did it, and on top of that, she was physically disabled. So yeah, an
Mm.
able-bodied versus a disabled parent
Mm.
are another two dynamics to actually consider when it is trying to do the lion's share of the parenting. So I say all that there's a lot to be considered here, and every family is unique, and so we have to take that into consideration. So in regards to communicating and expected challenges, here are a few: reviewing the readability, clarity, form, and frequency of all memos, notices, and other print and non-print communications. So, an expected challenge to communication would be for the disseminators of information to be able to review the readability, clarity, form, and frequency of all memos, notices, and other print and non-print communications. Keeping this in mind, another challenge would be considering parents who do not speak or read English well.
Mm.
Huh? And then lastly, establishing clear two-way channels for communications between home and school. Those are challenges.
Mm.
Huh? Number 3,
All right.
moving into volunteering. What we see here as an example of related practice would be recruiting parents to help. So it goes back to our earlier conversation. How do we recruit parents to help? Solutions can be unpacked,
Mm-hmm.
but starting at the school level, the ask means everything.
Mm. Mm.
Has a parent been asked, right?
I took a fundraising, a very extensive fundraising workshop. It wasn't really a workshop. It was much more in depth, and it was like I want to say 2 or 3 days. Um, it was actually sponsored by the Harvard Foundation for Public Gaming. This is many years ago, but anyhow, the woman who did the I remember what it was now. One of the yeah, this was a 1 year event over several months. I'll stay out of the weeds here. But the one component was on fundraising. The thing that she said over and over again was the number one reason that people give is because you ask. If you don't ask them, they won't give. There's plenty of people who would give to and volunteer for, but because you don't ask, they don't think you need them or want them. So asking is extremely important.
Extremely. And so, accordingly, there are some expected challenges with volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
For example, recruiting volunteers widely so that all families know that they are welcome.
Mm.
Mm. Also, making flexible schedules for volunteers, assemblies, and events to enable working parents to participate. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, organizing volunteer work, providing training, matching time and talent with the school, teacher, and student needs,
Mm.
and recognizing efforts so that participants are productive. Things to consider. Or as Arsenio Hall would say, things that make you go, hmm.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. So now we move into number 4, learning at home. So this is a type of involvement. An expected or related practice would be providing information and ideas to families regarding how to help children with homework. I have some homework stories for you regarding my own experiences as a youth. But the teacher told me to do it this way is one of the things that comes to mind. And so I'm debating between my mom. Like the teacher told me to do it this way. My mom like, no, you got to do it this way, baby. And yeah, it was. Whew, I was up to midnight sometimes
That must be
trying to
extremely
work it out.
frustrating. I mean, I'm listening as you're talking about it, things are going through my mind, and so, the poor kid is really caught between a rock and a hard place, and extremely frustrated because they don't want to be disobedient, and your mom and dad are telling you to do one thing, but the teacher said it has to be this way, and you're trying to tell your parent that they're wrong, but you don't know how to do it, but you know that what they're telling you is different from what the teacher said. So that could be that. But go on.
It is. Listen, I could tell you from experience, my own personal experience, it was frustrating. Some tears was flowing, and after I dried up my tears, I had to come up with a solution. I think I ultimately did it my mom's way, and I think it was okay. However, just getting past that barrier of having that debate. But the teacher said it had to be this way means that there needs to be flexibility in terms of if we're doing math and the parent knows one way and they're teaching this quote unquote new math
Mm-hmm.
and you get the same answer based on the parents' old way, the traditional way of doing things versus this
Mm-hmm.
new math, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's above and beyond my head. I don't know who decided to actually sit down and say, you know what, we're gonna change how we do math around here. Yeah, we need to dial that back. I'm just saying. So I digress just a little bit because I'm going to jump into some expected challenges related to um, getting involved with the learning at home aspect. And so there's three listed.
Mm-hmm.
So designing and organizing a regular schedule of interactive homework and helping families stay aware of the content of their children's classwork. So homework versus classwork could be two different things, or they could be the same. It depends. It just depends. So the challenge is coming up with a way to design and organize a regular schedule of interactive homework and help families stay aware of the content of their children's classwork. Communication goes back to communication. Oh boy, here we go. Number two, coordinating family linked homework activities.
Mm.
If students have several teachers, middle school and high school is where that transition comes into play. So, how do we do that? The last one is involving families and their children in all important curriculum related decisions. I'll say that one more time. The challenge is involving families
Mm-hmm.
and their children in all important curriculum related decisions. How does that get done? I'll move on.
I'm in active listening mode because
no problem.
this is really because I'm having, I have two sets of kids. I have my 11 and 10-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thinking back now when my 30-year-old kids
Mm-hmm.
were 11 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the frustrations, that poor things, I feel bad. I really feel bad. I think, look, no, that's wrong. This is not how you do it. Look, listen to me. I'm trying to help you. And poor thing, my daughter, she's crying. But Dad, this is not what the teacher said. You're doing it wrongly. And we would have this debates, and and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but go on.
Happening in almost every family across the globe are these debates. So it's universal, and so this is just bringing certain things to light, certain things to start to consider. So number 5 in terms of involvement is decision making. And so a related practice in terms of an example would be involving parents in school decisions.
Mm.
Involving parents in school decisions. And so provided that there are going to be expected challenges,
Mm-hmm.
there are a few listed here. And so one of them would be including parent leaders from all racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and other groups. I'll say that again, including parent leaders, emphasis on leaders, from all racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and other groups. That's a challenge. The next challenge is offering training, emphasis on training, to enable leaders to represent other families with input from and return of information to all parents. Lastly,
Mm-hmm.
including students along with parents in decision making groups. How does that get done? That's a challenge, but every challenge provides for itself an opportunity for us to learn, grow, and thrive.
Mm.
Okay. And so lastly, we have another type of involvement referred to as collaborating with the community.
Okay.
So the example given here is the integration of services or integrating services and resources from the community to strengthen schools, families, and children's learning. Now, based on this, here are some expected challenges. The first one is responsibilities, funds, staff, and locations for collaborative activities. So, by saying that, identifying who is going to be responsible for X plus where are the funds coming from, as well as do we have enough staff, as well as the location for collaborative activities. The next one is informing families of community programs, communication, for students. So I'll start that again, informing families of community programs for students, such as mentoring, tutoring, and business partnerships. Next, we see a challenge concerning assuring equity of opportunities for students and families to participate in community programs or to obtain services. I'll say that again. The challenge is assuring equity of opportunities for students and families to participate in community programs or to obtain services. And our last challenge related to collaborating with the community is matching community contributions with school goals, as well as integrating child and family services with education. And so all six of these types of involvement actually are supposed to produce some expected results for students, as well as parents,
Mm-hmm.
as well as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go from here in terms of solutions? How do
Well,
we address these challenges?
these are you know I'm appreciative of you laying all those things out because it's a huge now, like we said at the very beginning, you know, the bigger the bigger the challenge or problem, um, the greater opportunity there is for solutions, and you know, no pain, no gain. You know, you want a big reward, you got to take big risks, so to speak. So there's a lot here to there's a lot of opportunity to get rich return. But it's important. The thing that I appreciate so much is the enormity of it, because implementing it across the system would seemingly be a tremendous challenge. And communicate. You. One of my favorite things you said. You know, communication. And as such, to me, it's. I don't see how you can even begin to achieve this without communication, because how do you communicate this through all of the parties involved, and then keeping the lines of communication open so we see some results.
Mm-hmm. You know what just happened to me just when you were speaking? I started looking inward, and I drew this mental map of Hartford. And so you know how it is that you'll have a map on the wall, and you will put pegs in terms of locations for certain types of things. Let's say, for example, it's a cell tower,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we did that same type of map and pinpointed the localities of all the schools in the city,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we would do like a triangulation
Mm-hmm.
and see what type of radius all of these schools actually fell into,
Mm-hmm.
so that then we could begin pilot programs
Mm-hmm.
based on locality of these schools. And so if we've got 36 schools, where are they placed in Hartford? And what are their proximities to the other schools? So whatever school fell into a particular range, let's say for example we did it's divided up. And it depends on locality. Let's do six schools, six segments, right? So six schools per segment. 6 times 6 is 36. And so each of those segments would be responsible for collaboration with community organizations based on locality, as well as identifying the families residing, as well as students attending. And so you really have to start breaking it down into small segments in order to make it manageable. The key thing about this is making it manageable. Yes, it's large. That's like, okay, for example, whatever your favorite pie is, you're not going to sit down and eat that in one sitting. Typically you're not going to do that. It's not advised. It's not advised. Pie eating advisory is being placed. Do not sit there and eat it in one sitting.
Yeah. One slice at a time, one bite at a time for the slice.
Absolutely. So compartmentalizing, or making it into smaller segments will allow for the communication to go out to the respective stakeholders in each segment, the same message. And so we're taking the 36 have identified the message, the development of culture, which is shared beliefs and attitudes and types of behaviors. Guess what? Now we take that back to the 6 respective segments. And from there, the 6 segments begin to unpack it respectfully to each of the stakeholders within that segment. Same message, to see what type of results we actually get. If it does not get the type of results they're seeking in terms of positive and productive results, and I'm always going to stipulate positive and productive results, because negative results can actually occur, but where that negative result actually occurs, how do we turn that around so that we turn that into actually a positive? So how do we reverse that so that we get a different type of result that can be seen as positive and productive?
Another thing that occurs to me is the necessity of data. I'm very glad we're having that we're having the conversation I'm listening to, because I'm thinking about like the superintendent, or central quote unquote administration, which a lot of people often attack. But at the end of the day, they're the ones ultimately responsible for implementing all of this. And it's a tremendous lift, because if you, as you're suggesting, if you have these 36 different points, and then from those points they're communicated, then the 36 points still need, here's central communication, looking for the data that's positive to come from here, and then you've got this central administrator or this local administrator in touch with the teachers and that whole community of the school, and then the parents, and ultimately is the homework assignment being done and being augmented the way the teacher is trying to instruct and advance the student? Is the parent in touch and involved with that? And this one little tiny piece of communication, the email that they didn't open, that would have helped them guide the kid through the homework, because in the email it said your child's coming home with a particular special project they're supposed to be working on. Here are some of the steps we went over in class that will help you help them. You didn't even get that email because you didn't read it. And so the kid comes back frustrated, doesn't want to do it no more because it's this conflict. So all that the people back at central administration can do is kind of just look at data, because people, because I'm one of them. Data. Like, when are we gonna look at actually what's happening? But you can't look at what's happening with 20,000 kids. All you can do is look at the overall, or the aggregate, I guess, of data that comes back. Is this working? Mm-hmm. And so I think, and that's one of the reasons why I said communication. It's so important that people understand the process, so that they can understand the role they play in the process. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes the expectations or desires are expressed, but how to achieve that is left out, or is in a vacuum, or the assumption is that they know. But they don't understand why it's important to read the email. It's not just a hello, how are you doing, just touch and base and make sure that if you have any questions type stuff. But there's actual communication that's here, and how do you make that communication something that the busy single parent can read or want to read? Right. And so it's a heavy lift. Doesn't mean that it can't be done. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. It still has to be done, but I think there has to also be some understanding that it's a heavy lift. But go on.
Right. So just touching on what you just stated last, in regards to, let's take one school.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. I'm the principal of one school within that 36 school system. Now, for me, I should know my parents or guardians per the students that are coming to my building on a daily basis. I should know, right?
Yes.
I should be in contact with each and every one of them. I should understand where they're coming from. They fill out paperwork related to their circumstances, monetarily, as well as, whether or not the student needs IEDs or whatever the case may be. I should know this. I should be intimately aware of this, because this is my responsibility. Now, I should know how many of their children actually attend my school. And so where it is, you have a household that has 5 children that attend my school. I'm gonna say I'm in the elementary school. They all attend my school right now. So that's one family. Mm-hmm. Say we have roughly 300 students. And so I should know, as the school leader, as the principal, each and every one of my parents. I should make it a point to meet with each and every one of them. So you would see that I have contacted all my parents, and this is the responses that I have gotten. So that I'm meeting with each and every one of them singly. We need to know each other, because we're working on this together in terms of building a relationship, having an understanding of what type of goals have been set forth within this school environment. And my goal overall is to make sure that our students are succeeding academically, and their general health and welfare are the major consideration too, while inside of this building, because that's my responsibility. Mm-hmm. That weight falls on my shoulders. And so understanding outside of that data being collected, whereby we only see numbers. Yes, we've got numbers. Okay, beautiful. Okay, yes, but what do those numbers mean in regards to addressing specific needs, in regards to communicating all types of information to the families, and in regards to making sure, not only communicating, but making sure that it's understood in terms of the value of the communication. So the exchange of communication is going to be a two-way street, but at the end of it, you have to understand that the respect has to be there, the value of input has to be there, and making sure that the parents understand what their role is in this process is all part of the relationship building process. Can you imagine being in a relationship where, um, yes, we said our I do's, and now we don't even talk to each other?
Mm.
We live under the same roof. We don't. I see you, but I have nothing to say to you.
Right, right.
How does that work? I don't even know what's on your mind. I'm cooking dinner, but I don't even know if this is what you're allergic to or not. Yeah, that is not a good relationship in regards to lack of communication. Communication also involves active listening, as well as making sure that understanding, both parties have a certain understanding at the end of the communication process. Like, I mean, this is not rocket science. A lot of people struggle with communication. However, it is one of the tools that we have been given in order for us to bridge the gaps between knowns and unknowns. And so we got to work harder on developing it and utilizing it effectively to the best of our abilities. But it's incumbent upon the person to want to even move in that direction
Mm.
in terms of developing communication skills for the benefit of better outcomes in the relationship.
All right. This is this is very, very good. Um, all right.
This is
Okay.
this is a it's a her Herculean task.
Mm.
It's a Herculean task. However, when it is that we break it down into Kevin Hart components, it can be done.
Um. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get Kevin small as Kevin
Small.
Hart is small in stature, right? So it's
Yeah, Kevin Hart composed.
when we break it down to Kevin Hart components, it can
Yes.
be
Yes.
done.
Yes. Yeah. But it. Yeah. It. I'm thinking to myself. It's. It's important to have honest dialogue so that you can really have an assessment of what it is.
Mhm.
And because until then you can't prescribe a solution if you don't have an understanding of the problem.
Right.
If your assessment that the left tire is flat, if your assessment is that the left tire is flat when in reality it's the right front tire,
Mhm.
then all of your energy is going toward fixing something that's not going to affect the problem. And so sometimes you don't want to hear what the real problem is, because the problem might wind up being yourself. I don't want to hear that. So then until you hear it, it can't change. So um, everyone has to do their job as it pertains to the heavy lift, including parents. Parents have to take time to read the emails sent home from the kids' teacher. You have to take the time to go to the school. You have to take time to go to the community meetings, the school climate meetings, the school climate survey that they send you that you don't think you need to fill out because it's just one. What difference is it going to make my one voice? But until, it's not your one voice. Maybe it's an opportunity to establish a relationship with you that can't be established because you didn't fill out the survey. So everyone has to do their part if everyone's going to benefit from the activity. And so it's important to have the conversation so that we can understand understand, know, and unpack what we need to do to contribute. Because if we have to work together to bring about the change, then that means we have to be honest and willing to fix those things that aren't working, and not necessarily what they're not doing, but what I'm not doing or what we're not doing. Because it's a lot easier to point to what they need to do than it is, all right, let me figure out what I need to do so I can point and say what they're not doing. Because if I'm not doing my part, then that's an equal part of the problem. Right. And so you know,
if we were braver as adults to say, "Am I the problem?" and answer honestly, I think this is lending towards what you're stating. By looking inward and saying, in terms of my role and responsibility, am I not doing what I need to be doing to make this a better situation? And if we answer honestly, and the answer is no, I am not doing what I should be doing, then the question or the follow-up should be, what do I have to do to turn this around, starting with me, in order to then be of assistance to others in the process? Can we answer that honestly is the real question. Or do we even bother to ask ourselves the question, am I the problem?
I may not be the overarching problem.
Right.
But if the car won't start because I'm the key, it may be small, but till we find the key, we can't start the car and no one going anywhere. So, you may not be the overarching problem, but if you are even a little teeny weeny part of the problem, it needs to be fixed. So I think we need to look at ourselves. We need to include ourselves in this analysis of what's wrong. Right. That doesn't mean that if I fix me, everything will be fine. But we can't leave ourselves out of the fix while looking at everything else. Because a lot of times our level of interest is because it's affecting us. So if it's affecting us, what am I doing, or what am I contributing to fixing the problem? In what way am I helping to fix the problem? And and your involvement as parents is paramount, because they're your kids. And there's a big role the parents play, which is why the ongoing conversation never ends in terms of how do schools engage parents, how do communities engage parents in the midst of them being in survival mode, in the midst of them maybe having challenges with literacy, in the midst of them having challenges economically, in the midst of them having a whole lot of hurdles that they have to jump over. And I think sensitivity needs to be given too. I don't think people need to be enabled, but people at the same time, you can't dismiss these challenges because they're part of what's there. So we're not sitting here saying or suggesting to you all out there that are viewing that this is easy, but it still needs to be done. It still needs to be done, because if schools are meant to educate, train, and prepare youth to be competitive in society, and the last year demonstrates, where technology is relative to where we are as a society. Even if you take from the pandemic the rise of distant learning, distant work with applications like Zoom and other applications where people can go to work remotely. If your kids are being prepared to work, but the new workforce is remote. They can't learn because they don't have access to the technology to have remote school. Then the people who are doing the hiring are going to have access to the very, very brightest minds, the very, very capable, the very best in the world. Right. Because if the job I need filled, someone from Singapore can apply for and get. It doesn't matter. Dr. Bowen is sitting in the middle of Singapore right now.
Absolutely is.
So, you could be in Singapore on the top floor of that hotel. It looks like it's floating on the two buildings. And no one would know the difference because, your contribution. So that's the same reality that your kids are competing with in the new workforce, in the new digital workspace. How are we preparing our kids for the digital workspace if they can't, if they're not excelling at what they do? So we have to be engaged. It is critically important that we are engaged as parents, irrespective of what we're doing. I would say that your children's education is equally important to them eating every day.
Absolutely.
Like you would struggle to make sure your kids get food every day. You have to struggle to make sure that they are educated every day. And like you would do whatever it takes to feed your kids, you have to do whatever it takes to educate your kids. That's how much we have to value education. It is essential that kids learn or they will starve to death. I mean, that's how the mindset has to change so that now you're engaged in everything that you need to do to make sure you're supporting their education.
Right. Absolutely. And so as we start to consider this, I'm just going to point out, one of the things just before we leave, there's the dynamic that the new norm is remote meetings, remote learning, right? So if we started to land on that as becoming part of the new norm, and as buildings begin to shut down, retail spaces begin to shut down because everything is now more accessible via being online, interviewing skills, communication skills, having a dialogue in front of your laptop with somebody that could be in Japan. How are we able to manage this on top of having the understanding that outside of the school, there's other things that need to be managed and worked upon, so it's trying to strike a balance and understanding that time management is essential, understanding the do's and don'ts in terms of decorum, behavior, how to best navigate being in this particular time of life that we find ourselves in, and technology is playing a huge role in how we interact with each other, because it's no longer face to face in terms of within the same environment, but it's virtual. And so under consideration is going to need to be how it is that we come up with a strategy that allows for us to manage it all, not just one aspect of our respective lives, but everything. And so with that being said, even with individuals currently in college, because I find myself working in a college environment, shifting from their norm of being in an actual classroom versus having it to take upon the role of being remote and learning different from what they're accustomed to, or rather comfortable with. So there's a certain comfort level that has been impacted. And so when you take people out of their comfort zone, there could be a lot of resistance in regards to whether they embrace and then shift into the new way of doing things. And so this pandemic has proven is that we've got a lot of things that have been identified as impactful in terms of our abilities to pivot and shift into new directions.
Mm. Wow. So we're in the midst of a paradigm change. The digital society. I'm looking at the city behind you, and the digital society in which we're moving in. Digital currency, cryptocurrencies, all of these different things that are happening at light speed. There's a real shift in how we do things, and there's a phrase that one of our hosts always says: "Own or be owned." In what way will you have ownership over the emerging opportunities, or will you be owned? If the office is closed, if the retail center down the street is closed because digital society, people are ordering online, people are working online, then a lot of the opportunities that people once had in working in those facilities or maintaining those facilities starts to diminish.
Absolutely.
Opportunities open up with maintaining digital facilities, so a server farm. There's some aspects of the server farm that the servers themselves can't take of, so human beings have to do it, but they're going to be few and far between. But instead of taking Spanish or Portuguese, how many codes how many can you write code, and right. How many kinds of coding languages do you know?
Absolutely.
These are the kinds of things that tomorrow's success folk are going to be working in. So, we really need to be involved so that we are exploring the potential that our kids have and the potential that they may be not getting exposed to because we're not exposed. So we really, really need to concentrate on how we're going to, how your kids are going to advance, which means you have to be involved. You really have to be involved, because otherwise the kids will be left behind. A year is like 10 years. It's not a year. It's like 10 years. If you set back a year, once upon a time it didn't mean anything. Now you set back a year, it's 10 years. Particularly if you were set back before the pandemic, and then a year later. So there's a lot of things we have to do as we come to grips with where we are. No matter how far behind we are or whether you're on par, we still need to be alert and engaged. Otherwise, I'm telling you, my friends, by the time you realize that your train is going somewhere, it's gone. And you get into the station with your luggage and the train's gone. And we don't want that for our kids. So it's important that parents get engaged, stay engaged, and hold accountable those entities that are teaching your children.
That sums it up nicely. We're in this digital era. Technology is not going anywhere. The new foreign language is a computer programming language. And if it is that, our students are not being exposed to this right now, with all this technology going on, they are going to be boxed out of these particular industries in terms of finding sustainable careers.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. I could start a whole nother conversation. I can start a whole. I haven't had my first cup of coffee, but I can smell my wife's coffee flowing into the room. So the coffee is starting to. The smell of the coffee is engaging my brain. But I could get into a whole nother conversation, but we're out of time, so we'll have to. We'll pick it up.
Maybe for next week, right?
We'll pick it up next week. All right. Dr. Maya Bowen, every Wednesday, as we talk about things of an educational nature. laying down the groundwork for our further conversations. We'll talk about educational opportunities and particularly in the realm of digital stuff. I'm sitting here amazed by the background. I'm looking at the technology behind you and the opportunities that technology present us without getting too esoteric and into the weeds. I'm thinking about how, you watch science fiction movies, they jump into a spaceship and they just seem to be able to fly it. And it seems ridiculous on the surface, but if it was a book, it would go into greater detail. Imagine that everyone knows how to fly a ship, because who doesn't know how to fly a ship? It's like walking. And I think that's more the statement, that they're so technologically advanced that just getting in and looking at the controls is something everyone just inherently knows how to do because they've come that far. And those are the opportunities that present themselves if we don't limit ourselves by rising to the level of mediocrity and thinking that we've attained something. We need to push beyond and grab the envelopes and go further. And I think it's important that, as one of our callers says here, education by any means necessary.
And it's at our fingertips, at our phones. We have a library in the palm of our hands.
Amen to that. All right, Dr. Bone, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Rest of the day.
Okay. All right, my friends. We'll see you. We'll see her next week, and we'll see you here tomorrow. All right. Bye.